Hey, guess what? You made it to part 2.
Welcome to the Apps4Truckers podcast. And here is your host, Tim Spence.
Well, welcome to Apps4Truckers podcast, number 13, part 2. This is kind of new for me because, and new for the podcast too, that we're doing a part 2. But as I explained at the end of part 1, sometimes when you start to chop up interviews, you lose the essence of what's being talked about. And I didn't feel right about it. So I chopped it up, and you know what that probably is going to mean? It probably is going to mean that I'm going to put out more than one a month if I start going long, but I want to have enough variety in each show so that you can get something from it. I want to make it interesting. And speaking of that, I want to tell you about a conversation I had real quickly with an over-the-road flatbed driver that I'm a friend with. It comes in town every now and then, and he and I sit and we have a cup of sweet tea like we do down here in the South. And so we were sitting, and Mickey is his name. If he listens to this, then he'll know that first names only, no company names mentioned. So I was talking with Mickey, and he said, I would listen to podcasts if they wouldn't talk about a bunch of nothing all the time. He said, it's always the same old crap. He said, they talk and they talk and they talk and nothing comes out. And, it's because you go into what I wrote about in why podcasts should be the future of trucking. They are the future of trucking if we have companies that will promote that to drivers and educate them how they can take advantage of this medium. So this is really the way it should be going for the transportation industry, because not everybody can get to the radio at a certain time to listen to a certain radio program. But he was just disgusted with it, and he said, Tim, that's the reason why I haven't listened to yours, probably, is because I just got burned out on them talking about a bunch of junk. He said, I would rather listen to a book. I said, well, I understand. I'd rather listen to a book sometimes too. But what I'm trying to offer to you here, and we're trying to get better at this every week, every month, every year, it gets better, and the content, I want to make it interesting so that not only will you want to listen to it now, you'll want to go back 2, 3, 4 months from now, over a year from now, and go back and say, they were talking about that in one of those podcasts. I think it was so-and-so, whatever. You should be able to go back in the show notes and play that. And if it's good and worthwhile content, then you should want to play it over and over. Now, I want to put together good content that you will want to go back and listen to. People have asked me, why are you not doing a weekly podcast? Well, one reason is I want to make each one worth going back and listening to. And if I make it weekly, then it's going to turn into talking about a bunch of nothing. And I'm not settled for that. So I will probably be working, now that I've gotten this to where I'm talking about 2 parts, I will probably be moving this to more than once a month. Who knows? But the main thing is giving you something that you will be interested in listening to, because if you're not listening, then I'm just talking in a microphone and taking up bandwidth and hard drive space. That's all.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Moving forward, we're going to talk with Jewel Jones of Over the Road Apparel. Why does this interest you? Well, I'll tell you why. Jewel is a jewel. She is a wonderful person, and you need to listen to what she has to say about what they're developing in the line of clothing for truck drivers. And they are, as she will tell you, and it is true, they don't just put out stuff with cute logos and stuff like that. They don't put out trucker shirts with sayings or cute pictures. They put out clothing that is, number one, it's durable, and number two, you can move around. It's fashioned for what you do. So take a listen. I think you'll be interested in what she has to say, mainly because she grew up in the transportation industry. She grew up around truckers. This is a passion for her. So take a listen. Jewel Jones with Over the Road Apparel. Here is Jewel Jones with OTR Apparel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. We've been talking back and forth for about a year now. Just I fell in love with the apparel line and what you had going on, and I want you to be able to tell folks a little bit about OTR Apparel. Can you kind of lead us in to tell us a little history about how all of this got started?
Over the Road Apparel is the first and only workwear clothing line just for truck drivers. We come from a rich history in the trucking industry. My sister and I, my sister who owns Over the Road Apparel and I both grew up in trucking. Our father started a freight logistics and trucking company 30 years ago. He started it with just a typewriter and a telephone and a legal pad, and he built it into a family-oriented business with 100 employees, 100 drivers, and they're pretty well known throughout the industry. And we were raised in the trucking industry, my sisters and I. We were always taught to appreciate drivers and how important they are. And I think we had a better understanding of that than a lot of other kids growing up. We were always talking about trucking, and it was like another person in our family, the trucking industry. And my sister purchased the business from my father in 2011, around the time that I graduated from college with a degree in fashion marketing. And we were sitting around talking one day about drivers and how much we appreciate them and how many drivers contributed to our childhood and to our security growing up, and started thinking of ways that we could show our appreciation and get other people to appreciate them and understand how important they are, and maybe gain some advocates in the industry. And that conversation sort of went over to driver image and how it's not really cool that drivers a lot of times don't have the best image. And we started thinking of ways that we could improve that. And my sister is the one that had the idea for a clothing line for truck drivers. And we both got really excited about the idea, and we decided to do a little bit of research. And I began calling truck drivers and asking them what they like in apparel, what they don't like, what problems are they having, and what were their apparel needs. And based on those conversations, I designed our current line of 6 work shirts. And at the end of all of our research, we realized we could really do some good and really help a lot of drivers with professional, functional workwear. And we decided to go ahead with this clothing line that really is our way of saying thank you for driving. And we created a YouTube video that expresses that message. If you type in "thanks for driving" on YouTube, you'll find it. And we always want to make sure that drivers know how much we appreciate them. We're even having a customer appreciation sale right now on our website. So everything, the whole history, everything tied into the company comes back to driver appreciation and improving driver image. A lot of what we do with the clothing line goes back to advocacy. And I feel like so many things affect truck drivers that they have no control over, whether it's regulations or shipping and receiving issues or truck parking. So many things they don't have control over, and that's kind of not fair. And I feel like maybe if drivers had a better image and if people would advocate for them a bit more, then things would maybe get easier for them. And so a big part of what we do, along with, you know, offering professional functional workwear, is creating a sense of advocacy industry and outside of it, so that people really appreciate drivers.
Well, tell me about the clothing line, what it is today. Give me an overview of what OTR Apparel has in the line itself.
Yes, so currently we have a line of 6 work shirts. My favorite are our button-down shirts, and my favorite button-down shirt is our Western. All of our shirts have very loaded features. We want to make sure that they're not only good for working on the truck, loading, securing freight, but also they're good for driving down the highways. They have to be durable but also comfortable. One feature we have on all of our shirts that I love is longer lengths, so that when you're bending over, your middle isn't exposed, and that's one of the biggest issues when I was interviewing drivers. They said, I hate it when I'm moving around and my stomach and my bottom are hanging out. And so that was my solution to that problem. Our shirts are extra long, so you're always covered. We have stain-resistant, wrinkle-resistant materials. I know a lot of guys don't always have the opportunity to do laundry the way that most people take for granted, how often they can do laundry. And so everything is stain and wrinkle resistant, so even if it kind of gets bunched up in your truck, the wrinkles are going to come out. Stain resistant, obviously you're dealing with a lot of oil. And I know that it's not always, we want to help drivers have a more professional image, but I'm realistic. I know that sometimes it's a dirty job. It's hard to stay spick and span, but I always like to say it's okay to get dirty if you look good doing it. We also have, in addition to our Western, that's my favorite, we have a 2-tone button-down and a basic button-down. So I like to think that we have a shirt for every personality. We have knit shirts that aren't button-down. They're extremely comfortable, very soft, very durable, and those have been really popular. They're sweat and odor resistant, so they're killing the bacteria that causes odor, which I know, again, you can't always get to a shower. And so we thought of a way to help with that by creating a shirt that kills the bacteria that causes odor. And then in terms of our new product line coming up, we're working on long sleeve shirts. Right now, everything we have is short sleeves, and we did that because we weren't sure which was going to do better, but now that our short sleeves have done so well, we're going to introduce our same styles in long sleeves. And we're also working on pants. And in designing the pants, I took the same strategy that I did with the shirts, where I interviewed actual drivers, and I talked to a ton of drivers about pants. And I called my driver friends, and I called random drivers that I pulled up from Google searches. I called carriers, and I also did a lot of social media posting asking how I can make pants work for a driver. And one of the biggest complaints I got is the crotch area. It's ripping when you're working, and then it's uncomfortable when you're sitting. And I don't want to divulge too much, but I think that's a problem that I solved quite efficiently. So those are in the testing phase right now. We're working on getting our first samples, and of course, everything we sell is tested on actual drivers. So I pop it on a driver, I send them down the road, and I see how the shirts do. And if they do well, we sell them, and if they don't, we go back to the drawing board. So the pants are just about to get to the testing phase, and I'm really excited to see how some of my designs hold up. I want to keep up to date with that as well. One of the reasons that I have really enjoyed talking about your company and following it is because, number one, of the research you do, and number two, because of the care you put behind it. It's difficult to find good clothing that you're actually comfortable in and that's going to hold up, because everything you find at the stores, it seems like they're either if they're light, it seems like that they're going to tear apart, and if they're built heavily, then they're uncomfortable and you sweat to death. Yeah, we tried to make sure we found a really good balance between durability and not being suffocated in your shirt. And that took a lot of time. A lot of that goes into our fabric. We put a lot of thought into our fabric, especially for our button-downs, making sure they were durable but not something you're going to suffocate in. So I think taking that fabric and making it a long sleeve is going to be the perfect fit.
So I do know that you have a custom type program where everybody doesn't have to have just OTR apparel on their shirts. Tell me something about that.
Yes, if you would like to purchase over-the-road apparel in bulk at a discount, we offer bulk pricing, and you can purchase our shirts without the OTR logo on the front and put your own logo there in place. We offer screen printing and embroidery services for a pretty good fee. We've got great competitive pricing for our logo artwork. So you can purchase anywhere from 12 to thousands of our shirts, and we can do them custom with your logo. There's no style restrictions, so you can order 2 of each style or however, as long as you meet the minimum, you start seeing savings. Again, we can do anything custom. If you have a certain jacket or pair of pants that you're looking for and you need our minimum order quantities, we can do something custom for you. And basically how I design everything, you can start from interviewing drivers, figuring out what you want, and then I can design your company something custom also.
One of the main reasons, and I've given many reasons why I'm talking to you today, but drivers out there need to understand this is not just someone who is throwing together clothing. This is someone who cares about the industry, has worked in the industry, and has done research for what type of clothing will work best for most drivers out there. And my hat's off to you. I appreciate everything that you do, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to start listening to your show.
Yeah, she's talking about the Real Life Truckers series. We were just talking about it. By the time this comes out, the first one should be already out. June 1st is episode 1, so that is really cool.
Absolutely, and I do want to throw one last thing in there. Driver feedback is my favorite thing in the world. My favorite thing also is sitting around and talking to drivers. So if you have any suggestions about apparel or our brand or anything that you want to toss at me, feel free to send me an email at Jewel, Jewel Jones, Jones, at overtheroadapparel.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And the other ways people can get in touch with you, Twitter handle and so on.
Yes, my Twitter handle is at Jewel Jones OTR. Our Facebook page is Over the Road Apparel, or I think it's OTR Apparel, excuse me. Our Facebook is OTR Apparel, and I'm on Facebook, Jewel Jones, and our website is overtheroadapparel.com.
Awesome. Thanks again, and we'll be talking to you soon, hopefully on another podcast.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
Now it's road test time.
So I got Tom with me on the phone, rolling down the road. Tom, what's going on?
Not too much today, Tim. I just finished a delivery up here in New Jersey, and I'm on my way down to my next pickup in Virginia today.
Now, this is kind of a new segment, and I kind of wanted to we're going to experiment with this for a little while and kind of see where it goes. But I really like being able to have a segment where I'm talking to somebody who is out there in the trenches, so to speak, because I am no longer in the trenches, as you say, or as some people will say. But Tom Kirk, known affectionately to some as Captain Kirk, does anybody actually call you that?
Yes, actually they do. I inherited that nickname in the 9th grade, and it has haunted me it'll haunt me to my dying day.
Well, Tom runs a website known as Road Tested Living, and as you heard from the intro, this segment is called The Road Test. So, Tom, before we get into what we were going to talk about, for people who haven't heard about you and what you do or what you've been doing, can you kind of bring them up to speed on who Tom Kirk is and roadtestedliving.com?
Sure, Tim, I can. Let's start back kind of at the beginning. I did Radio Shack for basically 10 years, and basically at the end of my Radio Shack career, I realized I wasn't just in the mood to deal with customer service and that anymore, and I looked into trucking. So 10 years ago, I switched over to trucking, and kind of enjoyed it. Like a lot of drivers, I came in fairly healthy, 250-ish pounds, give or take a little bit, but in fairly decent condition, fairly decent shape, a little overweight, but not horrifically so, according to my doctors. So I went out, started driving, and I noticed that every year my blood pressure would get a little wonky. I put on a little bit of weight, and it just slowly kind of crept up till I got to around 300 pounds. And the doctor at work pretty much gave me a choice. You've got to change your lifestyle and your weight, or you're going to end up having to pay for a sleep study and probably end up on a sleep apnea machine. And that was about 3.5, 4 years ago where that process started. And I would lose a little weight, enough to appease them temporarily, but they were still saying you've got to lose more, and then I'd gain it back again and really started yo-yoing. I went back to really what I first started doing when I first got driving on the truck. I started cooking more. How that got started was when I was making deliveries almost every day into New York City for my company, just running a load of meat in, bringing the empty trailer back out. A lot of nights I'd be at the Vince Lombardi Travel Plaza, and as a lot of you know who've stayed on any of the turnpikes, but especially in New Jersey, and especially at the Vince, you have a choice of Nathan's hot dogs, Popeye's fried chicken, or a Burger King. And, well, I can eat Popeyes to an extent. I'm not going to pay that much for a hot dog, and I'm not a Burger King fan. So I started cooking on my truck. I was fortunate that a lot of the places I delivered at, I could run next door to the grocery store, grab a few groceries while they were unloading me. And I noticed I was starting to eat, more regularly and really unintentionally more healthy. And next thing I know, I was down about 25 pounds. Went to work for the next physical. They were quite impressed, and I started using some of the tips from Bob Perry from Rolling Strong. Got down even more, and basically a little over a year ago, I for the first time managed to get a 2-year physical card. I got down to basically the goal weight the doctor had set. During that process, when I reconnected with Bob Perry, he encouraged me to start sharing my story of how I did it. Some other people on the Rolling Strong staff encouraged me to start, sharing some of my recipes and what I was finding worked on the truck, and that birthed the idea of Road Tested Living, which was going to be a website where I'd share from a driver's perspective, ways that you can lose weight on the road and overall have a better quality of life. If you look at it, truck drivers out here, we do a lot of amazing things, and it just allows, and we live in these small, tiny boxes, yet some of these drivers, if you see what they put in there, either in terms of household luxuries or whatever, they can have a very fulfilling, satisfying life on the road. And we hear everybody else complaining about, hey, I can't exercise because I can't go to the gym, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. And these are people that have all these luxuries that we as drivers would love to have. Hot and cold running water, showers, all this other kind of stuff at their fingertips, and everybody just keeps saying how miserable their life is. Yet a large percentage of the drivers out here, we have very full, very satisfying, very complete lives. We do it very much on a no-frills plan. That it's basically kind of sharing the story of how drivers find a way to be happy, healthy, and successful on the road. Just to share some of these tips, both to other drivers, but if we as drivers can figure out how to be happy and live well on the road, then what's the excuse of everybody else? So that really kind of sums up what Road Tested Living is all about. Is just basically the health tips and tricks of various drivers and the various life tips and technology tips and tricks that they use to have a better life out on the road.
Yeah, kind of a hub or a source for that type of information, right?
And that's really what it is. And I know as of late I've gotten behind on some of it because I've gotten some sidetracked by some other projects that have taken a little bit higher priority than I originally had intended, which are fortunately winding down. Over the last several months, I've been involved in working on a couple of cookbooks for drivers, helping to plan the first of its kind driver health event for the Great American Truck Show down in Dallas in August of 2015. That has taken far more time than I or anybody else had ever anticipated. the results are going to be worth it, but the results are a lot of stuff that I want to get done. I'm gotten a little bit behind on, but fortunately we're getting caught up. I'm finding some great people that, to provide some support and additional content. So we should be getting back on track, becoming the hub and the overall resource I've always envisioned road-tested living to be.
Gotcha. So today we're just going to talk just a little bit about how drivers are actually going above and beyond what the public actually sees as a truck driver. I'm sure it does great things for the public perception of truckers. So your segment, Tom, tell me about it.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. Today, kind of in this segment in general, we're just going to talk about various things that drivers are doing, things that drivers find have worked either to improve their lives or the image of the industry. Lately, there's been a whole bunch of stuff going on, which has just really kind of caught my attention, and that drivers have decided that they're going to get proactive. We hear a lot about these various health regulations and everything that's coming out onto the market right now, whether it's being imposed on by the companies or the DOT. And there's an image that kind of goes along with this that the public has, that the average truck driver is, fat, lazy, undereducated. And as you know and I know, the average driver, has a lot of education, maybe not always in terms of formal college education, but, from the school of life, we're probably some of the more educated people in that respect that I know, but we're also some of the most engaged people in projects that we really believe in. And I've selected a few stories about drivers that have really just went out and went above and beyond the extra a mile, both to improve themselves, but as well as the image of the industry. And the first one that we're going to hit today is actually a gentleman by the name of Bill Baker. He's a 62-year-old truck driver and a member of the Trucking Runners group on Facebook. And that's a group of drivers that basically get together and support each other to get healthier, and obviously most, if not all of them, run. And Bill's kind of an interesting character. He's been running for a number of years, and he started off running marathons and the shorter races, 5 and 10Ks for a number of years. And one weekend, he had nothing better to do, wanted to run, found a longer race, what they call an ultra or an endurance race, a 50K, decided to run it, decided to start running even longer and longer races. And just recently, he put together a team of 4 drivers. The youngest is 42, if I remember correctly. And these 4 gentlemen ran the inaugural Vol State 500K, which is essentially a run across the state of Kentucky. It does go a little bit into some of the neighboring states, and it's essentially the equivalent for each runner on the team of running a little bit over 3 marathons. They run, if I remember correctly, right around 100 miles or a little bit over 100 miles each. They not only, since it was the first one, they set all kinds of records. They were the oldest team. They ran the fastest time. They came in first place. And it's, basically every first that you can get, they got it. And, it was really quite impressive because you've got 4 drivers who don't have the luxury of training the way most people who do running do, because, they're out driving, on a regular basis. So they've got to squeeze their training runs into their normal activity schedule. And to basically end up not just finishing the race, but powering through it. One of the runners, Jorge, actually came down with a case of food poisoning partway through the race and still ran through it. So, this kind of shows a lot of the grit and determination, but it really shows to me how, 4 drivers have essentially proven that you can be a truck driver, you can train to do things that you don't think are possible, and it really just shows the overall public that, truck drivers are more than just that. They do have hobbies, they do have careers, and they aren't just the fat and lazy people that eat thirds and fourths from the buffet that a lot of people think they are.
Yeah, showing how we are willing and able to go above and beyond the call of duty. I think a lot of people just don't realize that about truckers.
And that's really true. And the next story that I think kind of really amplifies that is a story about the Trucking Solutions Group. And there's a large number of people in there. You've got Rick Ash, Linda Caffey, Bob Caffey, and Henry Albert. All four of them are recipients of the TA Citizen Driver Award and have had truck stops named after them as part of their honors for their community service and going above and beyond. Them, along with the rest of the Trucking Solutions Group, Jenny Neverez, Jeff Clark, and Les Willis, as well as myself from Protested Living, have been very involved recently in helping to plan the upcoming Gas Truck Show with Randall Riley. Randall Riley realized they made some mistakes with in past shows and lost focus on the driver. And last year, the Trucking Solutions Group was doing a basic community service project that they've been doing for a number of years at the Dallas Truck Show, where they would organize a blood drive with the American Red Cross. And they had the opportunity to speak with one of the vice presidents. He says, we'd like to get more involved in driver health. And we set up a meeting for after the truck show and said, we'd like to see a health pavilion. We'd like to see a mammogram unit out there for the women, because a lot of female drivers do not have the ability to easily get a mammogram through their schedules. And after explaining all the needs and everything else, myself, Les, Linda, and Rick basically rolled up our sleeves and plunged in to what's been about 7 to 8 months of planning at this point to bring a first-of-its-kind health pavilion down to the Dallas Truck Show, where there's going to be free screenings for drivers. We're still working to get the last little bit of the mammogram unit confirmed. Basically, every screening down there, any driver or anyone in the trucking community are going to be able to go down there and get an idea of how their health is. And part of the reason for this is we're all passionate about health in various roles, but we really want to see the drivers begin taking charge of their own health, because my thought is that if I don't take care of my own health, if I don't take care of myself, number one, I'm not going to be able to drive long term. But number two, and I think most importantly, the government is going to see that as an excuse to come in and say, you have to meet these medical conditions. Well, if I'm in charge of my health and taking care of myself, they're not going to have to come in and do that. And I think, a lot of drivers are really starting to recognize it, which is something I've been seeing. And this is really a case where drivers have just said, we're not getting any compensation for this, we're not getting any personal benefit out of this. We're just saying we want drivers to be healthier, and we want to give something back to the community at large. I've got to really give a lot of credit to Les, to Rick, to Linda for all the work that they have also put into this event coming up, because truly it is a team effort. And really that's what trucking is about. It's about drivers helping others. We often say we're no longer the knights of the road. We are. It's just in a little different format. We may not be able to stop to help each other, other drivers the way we used to, or broke down along the side of the road for a variety of reasons. But you are seeing that camaraderie starting to build up at the truck stop again, at the truck shows, and drivers just really taking the time to help another driver out. And this is just one of the ways that it's being done this year.
Before we go here, Tom, tell people how they can get in touch with you.
There's a few ways you can get in touch with me. One, you can go to my website, roadtestedliving.com. There's a contact form on there where they can send me a message. They can also email me at roadtestedliving@gmail.com. And then last, they can find me on Facebook and Twitter at Road Tested Living. That's living without the G on the end. So those are some of the ways that they can get a hold of me. And I really thank you for letting me come and talk to you and share with some of the stuff that's going on out here on the road today, Tim.
And now, the Apps for Truckers Driving Motivator.
Today's Driving Motivator comes from probably one of my favorite people from my childhood, Carol Burnett. Many times sitting and laughing until I cried watching her show. But she said something very serious here. She said, "Only I can change my life. No one can do it for me." That kind of brings up something that one of my close friends said the other day. She posted a video online and she said, "Take some time to make one simple change today." Whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual, whatever is important to you. Take some time to make that one change today, because if you're not improving, you may be regressing. But one thing is true. If you don't make a change in your life, nobody's going to do it for you. Thanks for listening today. I appreciate you tuning in. And again, I appreciate you checking in from LiveTrucking.com to see what's going on over here. This is, like I said, this is a monthly. We're going to be doing this even more. I appreciate every bit of feedback that you give, whether it's negative or positive. Either way, it's still feedback. This show has been put together by feedback from different drivers that I have spoken to or have tossed me an email or such. So feel free to comment, whether it be on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, even check out Pinterest. I enjoy throwing a few images on there every now and then. Keep on top of what's going on the YouTube channel. Every now and then we'll be having some extra videos to throw up there. That sounded really weird, to throw up there. To post there. We'll say it that way. Anyways, thanks for listening again. Be safe, and we'll see you on the next podcast.